Hello, this is Gabe Cymbalista with Cymbalistic Cynicism on the Escape Network, and today our guest is somebody really freaking funny. Let's just leave it at that, and he'll introduce himself. Part of my Tourette's or lack thereof. Hello, this is Steve Stoliar. Stole, as in, what was it? Stole your wallet?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Just want to clear that up.
See how pretty freaking funny I am?
Absolutely. Well, I was gonna go full Tourette's, but I wanted to, take it slow. No, I have Tourette's syndrome, so I believe I brought that up once. So yeah.
All right. I will not pay attention to any audio or video nervous tics or noises. You can not pay them to if I do that too.
Fine. I'm actually very generous and the least stereotypical Jew you'll ever meet. So
okay.
Well, yeah. So
I like the graphics on this thing with the stained glass roses. It gives it a funereal quality, as if they salute to me after my death, which it may be at this rate. Or I feel like Tom Sawyer attending his own funeral. Anyway, be that as it may.
Yeah, please tell us a little bit about yourself, Steve.
Oh dear. Well, I mean, I'm a screenwriter, an author. I've done voice work for animation and radio. I was born in St. Louis. I grew up in LA, assuming I've grown up. And when I was in college, I got to work for my all-time hero, Groucho Marx, for the last 3 years of his life. And I wrote a book about it called Raised Eyebrows, My Years Inside Groucho's House, which is all about my 3 years inside Groucho's house, hence the name. And it is about to be made into a motion picture which blows what's left of my mind. The idea of walking onto a set that is meant to replicate a house that I spent the better part of 3 years in 45 years ago, and seeing people playing people I knew personally, including someone playing me at 20, is whatever meta means. This is that. It's like the mirror within the mirror within the mirror within the mirror. But it's been a heck of a twisty road trying to get to this point, with false starts and it looking good and things falling through. It's not for the squeamish trying to get a movie made, but I held out for what I wanted in terms of honoring the material, because I would meet with people and they'd say, oh, hey, here's an idea, and then they'd want to take it completely away from the book I wrote. And it wasn't as important to me to make a deal with someone as it was to have something that stayed true to the basic story. I knew there'd have to be all sorts of compromises in terms of characters and dialogue and story, but I held out, and it seems to be panning out. We are looking to begin filming this fall, perhaps September, and wow. And Groucho, the elderly Groucho, will be played by Jeffrey Rush.
Very exciting.
Some of your listeners, viewers will know from Pirates of the Caribbean or Shine, for which he won an Oscar.
And what was it?
Sienna Miller is the female lead, playing Erin Fleming, who was the young actress that really took control of Groucho's life towards the end. She's a very complicated person. It'd be too easy just to dismiss her as just like Cruella de Vil or someone like that, because she could be very difficult and mercurial and abusive, but she also was very attentive to Groucho at a time when his family didn't really want the responsibility of looking after him. And she devoted herself to him, but she made his last years much rockier than they needed to have been. And this was a hell of a thing for me to go through at around 20 years old, these volatile personalities. And, I had grown up in a fairly tranquil household. There was no screaming or slamming doors. There was no cussing, I hate you and go to hell. Nothing like that. It was a pretty middle of the road, close to the vest family. And then I'm thrown into this best of times, worst of times situation because I'm getting to meet and getting to know my hero and spend quality time with him, sitting at the lunch table, listening to his stories about vaudeville and making movies with his brothers, and having him pontificate about history and politics and the people he's known. And then the downside was getting close to my hero as he's fading out, because he was in his mid 80s and not in great shape, and then trying to second guess Erin Fleming, this woman that Sienna Miller is going to be playing.
Breaking.
And it's an interesting story. I mean, I'm patting myself on the back, but there's a bit of kind of Ed Wood in it with this impressionable
interesting.
And his aging hero. There's a bit of Sunset Boulevard with someone who's not quite in their right mind, but calling the shots.
I have a quick question. Oh,
yes,
sorry.
Sir. I'll give you a lengthy answer, I'm sure.
Oh, hey, good evening, Joe. Joe is the guy who put together the network of podcasters. So my question is, what was it?
I give up.
So no, I just lost my train of thought. I assume they're in pre-production. You said they're in pre-production or during production? In the middle of production?
It's pre-production now. We'll be in different forms of that, and then looking to shoot probably in September. And it takes a while to assemble these things with sets and costumes and locations and all those preparations that go into it. But I co-wrote the script with the director, Oren Moverman, who is a great guy. He did Love and Mercy, the Brian Wilson biopic, wrote that. He was up for an Oscar for writing The Messenger with Woody Harrelson, where Harrelson plays a soldier that has to visit people's homes and break the news that their loved one was killed in Iraq. But it's great. I've being, quote, just the writer, and having had it happen a number of times in television that I wrote for quite a few years, I've been in fear of being marginalized, because that's usually the case, where the big boys come in and say, thank you, you've given us a fine scaffolding, a fine framework, we'll take it from here.
Yeah, and then you're out. Yeah.
You and a friend can come to the premiere, now buzz off.
That was going to be one of my questions. What was your involvement in this? That's in terms of that.
I'm in the loop.
That's great.
It's really cool that they run stuff past me. It isn't that I have any kind of final word on anything, but I at least have a vote. And it does matter to them that I lived this, and I wrote the book that they felt was worthy of turning into a movie. So it's, on the one hand, it's to their advantage to listen to my take on it, but I also accept that it's not a documentary, and you have to think what is to the benefit of it as a motion picture with a beginning, middle, and end, and
It's not about the reins, it's about being accurate. It's telling the story the right way, or the best possible way.
Yes, although it will still be overwhelmingly accurate. We didn't really stray that far. And it's almost like a play. Most of it does take place inside Groucho's house, so there aren't any dream sequences on Neptune or flashbacks to the 30s. I mean, if there's moments from their films, it will be seeing them on TV, which is as I did, sitting in Groucho's den with him next to me, talking to me about the films. So that, again, would be sort of like Ed Wood, where Martin Landau is with Ed Wood watching White Zombie on TV and talking about that.
I love that movie.
So, yeah. So, yeah, it is. It's like if you read the book and liked the book, that is how the movie's going to be. You know, I'll see people online saying things like, "Well, I want to see Harpo, and I want to see the funny stuff with Chico and the piano," and it's like, I'm sorry, I didn't live in the 1930s. This is not the Groucho Marx story any more than Ed Wood was the Bela Lugosi story with him making Dracula or The Raven. Or, you know, it was him towards the end of his life and interacting with these other people, and that was my experience, and it was, you know, I wouldn't have traded it for anything. It changed my life.
Right, you know, that's a little bit of an echo. Why? I grew up on the classics. Now, sorry about the echo. I don't know what that's coming from.
Only you would know.
Yeah.
And you don't know. So now we're stuck.
I don't know, so I just got to deal with it.
You have to explain what the classics constitutes, because for a lot of people, the classics would be Star Wars and Titanic.
Well, yeah, I was going to do so. Yeah, I was going to say, I grew up, my parents raised me in classical music, classical movies, and classical rock. Like, the Beatles was my first favorite band. I was raised on hundreds of years of classical music, meaning Beethoven, Bach, Brahms, all that stuff. And I grew up on, like, I grew up on horror movies, was my favorite, but it was Bride of Frankenstein, Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, House on Haunted Hill that I grew up on, in terms of which the films like
$10,000 if you can spend the night in my mansion. The ghosts are moving again. They're coming for. Oh, I've frozen again.
Not again. Hold on. Well, we can still hear you. All
right. I should never have done my Vincent Price or Alicia Cook Jr. impression without warning the video that it may freeze upon doing that.
Well, it is.
And that's such a stupid pose of me. Couldn't it freeze on something with me smiling?
Something more flattering.
Now it looks like I'm saying, "Yeah, that's it. I want more." You got so you can dish it out, but you can't take it. Who else does it look like?
Marlon Brando from The Godfather.
Look what they done to my son. I want you to use all of your artistic talents to make my son presentable again.
Oh, Gotten Himmel.
Gotten Himmel. Well, this is wonderful. It's a slideshow.
Wunderbar. Can I tell you something? You have to understand, my father is a spitting image of Groucho.
Oh my.
And
did he smoke a cigar?
He used to, years ago. And he did a whole, and that was before I watched the films. I was much younger, as was he. But he at his wedding, my parents' wedding, a lot of the guys wore the Groucho Marx glasses.
Right.
And I said, how did you not have that photo developed? Because it's not in their wedding album. But I'll show you now. Facebook for a while offered facial recognition tagging, meaning it would tag people via facial recognition. And it messed up sometimes. But there was a photo, and I'm going to bring it up, of Groucho Marx from one of his movies that I posted on Facebook with the intent of tagging my father. And via facial recognition, what did Facebook do? It tagged my father. And I showed it to somebody, and they thought it was him.
Please put the picture over the frozen picture. Day at the Races, 1937, MGM. Yes.
And you have to understand, my father was a caterer for 40-plus years.
A caterer?
A caterer for 40-plus years. So we always had that, like, white shirt with the short sleeves. He rolled the sleeves up, and he had to work with a lot of the food. And it was very he was the chef. The other guy was more the business guy. He also did business with my father, but he was the chef. And you walk in the kitchen, he'd look like that. He'd be on the phone, the same stance, the way he'd sit there on the phone. And it's scary how much he looks like him. There was another guy who he looks like when he had a reddish red in his mustache, but he's been getting that his entire life, and it's hilarious. Because I should have pulled up a photo of my father, but I'm gonna quickly grab one, and you'll see.
Yeah, how can we compare and contrast and write a lengthy
100%.
essay on these similarities?
Oh, you're right. This is him and me when I was not even a year old yet. I'm gonna bring it up right now, and I'm still hoping that you come through moving again. But we'll just blame the weather in New York. It's supposed to be spring now, but I've been saying what a lovely winter we're having this spring because the weather has not updated. Here, so this is my father when I was a baby.
Ah, and that's his
one
real
example.
mustache.
What?
That's his real mustache.
That's his real mustache.
And the shadow makes it all the bigger a brush, like Groucho's grease paint mustache.
Yes, yes. My father's had it since he was 16 or 17.
Wow.
It's been that way his entire life. We've never seen him without it. I feel like he'd be naked or even freezing if they shaved it off. So we would never do that to him.
Wow.
Then again, I've been getting death threats from women who would cut my eyelashes off as I sleep because they're so jealous of them. Because apparently we men have divine eyelashes carved in heaven and fortune and hell we don't deserve. So,
Elizabeth Taylor had 2 sets of eyelashes, so it always looked like she had mascara.
Really?
And purple eyes.
Was it like legit?
Yes.
So she was albino, or was that just her? No. It just happened to be.
She was an American. She was born. She was of normal lineage, but her eye color was purple, and she had 2 sets of lashes, which gave her that thick, made-up look, even without makeup.
Listen, I'm
To
gonna
do with our discussion, but I thought.
Yeah. Listen, but what I'm gonna do is so we could get off this shot of you. I'm gonna remove you, and I want you to take off and go and sign in again. You'll be fine. It's not gonna.
Is this going out live?
This is live on YouTube, but right now everybody's off. Like right now, the viewers went down for the moment. So let's get you back.
I can't imagine why.
So
you want me to totally disconnect and reconnect?
Just close the window and reclick on the link. Give me one moment. Go ahead. There you. Nice try. I saw your eyes move. But by the way, yeah, can I tell you that was well played. No, I think it is a connection thing. Sometimes it's just the it's internet. It's not this website. But I'm not, you know. But it's whatever it is, and that's all that I am. It is what it is, and that's all that it is. Yeah, what's it called? So, but I want to ask you because I do want to ask you about how you were able to take on the role during, like, from the girl who was controlling his life. What was her name again? I'm sorry.
Erin Fleming.
Why was it Fleming?
Erin, Erin.
Erin. Oh, okay. So, but can you tell us a little bit about how that came to be? How, this guy in his college in his 20s, who was like Groucho Marx, he was like Groucho Marx's like biggest fan, or one of his biggest fans, if not the biggest. Wound up being able to, taking this girl, this controlling woman out of commission from control, trying to push everybody away and trying to taking care of him the rest of his life.
Well, I didn't push her out of the way. I would have been fired.
No, right. I didn't mean that.
Yeah, I just sort of learned to try to steer clear of her if she was on the rampage. But what was difficult about her, I mean, many things were, but one of them was something would happen and we would think, well, that's no big deal. And then she would have a colossal shit fit and throw things and slam the door and scream. And then something else would happen where we think, oh no, when Erin finds out about this, she's going to be intolerable. And she would shrug it off and laugh it off and go, oh yes, that's just Tom, or something like that. And it's like it was impossible to gauge how she would react because she was so mercurial and ran so hot and cold. But did you ask how I got the job or how I managed to work in an environment like that?
Oh, well, I was going to start with how you got the job. I was going to start with that.
Well, I started a committee at UCLA where I was a history major to try to put pressure on Universal Studios to re-release Animal Crackers, which was caught in a legal bind. And they didn't think it was worth spending the money to untangle it just to put out this old black and white Marx Brothers movie. All of my friends were Marx Brothers fans, and this was the big missing link in their films. I mean, they only made about a dozen, and this was their second movie, and Groucho played Captain Spaulding, but it hadn't been in theaters since the 50s in reissue, and hadn't been part of Universal MCA's package of syndicated movies that they would put on TV. So this was like this buried treasure. And so I did get in touch with Erin Fleming, and she brought Groucho to UCLA, and I was finally able to meet my hero. I said, Groucho, I'm very happy to be meeting you after all this time. And he said, well, you should be. And then Erin said, this is Steve Stoliar. He's trying to get the Animal Crackers out. And Groucho said, well, did you get it? And I said, not yet, but we're working on it. And he said, well, you better or I'll fire you. And I said, I didn't even realize I was working for you. How much are you paying me? And he said, a little less than nothing. We were off and running. And my heart was pounding so hard, sitting with him, surrounded by students and the press and cameras, making our case for why this should be out. And then Universal relented and cleared the rights, and they said, all right, we'll put it out in one theater in Westwood and one in New York, and that'll be it, and we don't want to hear any more about it. So we had a premiere at the UA Westwood, and it ended up breaking the box office record for that theater, which had been set by the French Connection several years earlier. And it was very gratifying for me to see a line down the block of high school or college kids in t-shirts and jeans and tennis shoes waiting to see this old movie that Universal thought, who's going to want to pay money to see that? And I had a few summer jobs fall through, and so a Hail Mary and asked her if there was anything at all she thought maybe I could be handy for. And she explained that they were looking for someone to handle the fan mail and organize all of Groucho's memorabilia for the Smithsonian after he was gone. And she offered me the job. And so they paid me money to go to Groucho's house and immerse myself ankle deep in all of the scripts and photos and letters and clippings. And like I said, just to be able to sit at the lunch table and talk with Groucho about, you know, whatever questions I'd had and wondered about, I could just ask him. And then, you know, there were a number of people from in front of and behind the cameras that would come to lunch or dinner or parties. And so I got to meet and spend time with Steve Allen and Jack Lemmon and Mae West, George Burns. I mean, it was, and Zeppo and Gummo, who were the other brothers who were still alive. They lived in Palm Springs. They had, you know, it has been said that Zeppo was the funniest. I don't know if that's true, but I know that he lit up a room when he walked into it and had a great sense of humor and was quite a rascal. And it made me wonder what must it have been like when they were all alive and at the top of their power, because it was fun enough just to have Groucho and Gummo and Zeppo trading stories and quips and that sort of thing. So it was just this amazing, it was a literal dream come true, because I used to dream about meeting Groucho and it would be really vivid and tangible. And then I would wake up and think, damn it, I was sure this time I had really met him. And as it would dissipate, I would get very sullen and think, I'm never going to meet this man. He's in his 80s and he's in frail health. But I ended up, as I say, working there for the last 3 years of his life. And some of it was tempestuous, and there were different factions. Groucho's son, Arthur, was sort of Aaron Fleming's enemy and vice versa. And there was a fight over conservatorship, and it got ugly, but, you know, as Dorothy said at the end of Oz, but some of it wasn't very nice, but most of it was beautiful. And that's my takeaway from that. And as I say, it changed my life. I felt such a strong affinity for Groucho's circle of friends. Aaron was friends with a younger crowd that I kind of found quirky and weird and couldn't really relate to. But Groucho's writers and writer friends I felt really comfortable with. And they appreciated the fact that a young whippersnapper like me knew who the hell they were, because they would look at me and think, you have no idea who any of us are.
Oh, I've gotten that all the time.
And I would say, yes, you're Nat Perrin. You worked on Monkey Business and Duck Soup and co-created the Addams Family. And you sign your name as the Deacon in the Groucho letters. And you're Irving Brecker. You wrote At the Circus and Go West. And it was like, what? And Groucho appreciated the fact that I was into the stuff that he was into. It sort of gave him hope that, you know, we weren't all pot-smoking hippies listening to loud rock and roll music, that I loved Robert Benchley and the Algonquin Round Table, and I loved George Gershwin and Irving Berlin.
Oh, my mother loves Gershwin.
Well, the mind blower is that he knew him personally. That was part of the whole historical aspect of working for him, was in addition to the fact that it was Groucho Marx, he himself, that man, he was someone who personally knew Gershwin and Porter and Berlin and George Kaufman.
Irving Berlin?
Yeah. Not East or West. Yes, Irving Berlin. And
North by North Irving.
Yes. And then Nat Perrin, who was one of Groucho's longtime writers, he was a huge Gershwin fan. And he said that when he was a teenager, he snuck into Aeolian Hall in New York on that day in 1924 when Gershwin introduced Rhapsody in Blue. And he said people were leaving because it was at the end of a very long program and it was very hot and stuffy inside the theater. But I was such a great fan of George Gershwin's, I decided to stick it out. So he got to hear the premiere performance of what is now one of the most famous pieces of music. And then Nat told me that when Groucho brought him out to California in 1931 to work on Monkey Business, and at some point in the 30s, they were at a party and Gershwin was at the piano. And Groucho said, come on, Nat, I'll introduce you to George Gershwin. And Nat's thinking, So he pulled him over and he said, George, this is Nat Perrin. He's the only man I know that can whistle the entire Rhapsody in Blue. And Gershwin just sort of said, oh, well, that's fine, which spared Nat having to whistle for 17 minutes. But yeah, it was a mind blower to realize that he interacted with these people that I think of in black and white, two-dimensional, that, you know, he hung out with them, went over to W.C. Fields' house in the Valley.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's one of the most amazing stories I've ever heard.
Well, that is why I finally caved when friends kept saying, you've got to write about this. You've got all these stories. And I thought, I was such a postscript to his amazing life and career. Maybe there's an article in it for Vanity Fair or Esquire or something like that, but there's no book in it. But then I surprised myself recreating the sequence of events, reconstructing them like an archaeologist. And sure enough, it was a book. And Dick Cavett wrote the introduction, and Woody Allen said it was one of the best books about a show business icon he'd ever read, which blew my mind. And it came out in hardcover, and then years later, I wrote a new afterword chapter that caught people up on what had happened to the people in the book since it originally came out. And now, as I say, it's going to be made into a motion picture. I should probably do a slight plug for myself. It's always uncomfortable, but
please feel free.
Raised Eyebrows, and it is, you can find it on Amazon in Kindle or softcover, or if you would like to get a signed or personalized copy, you can go to my website, which is Steve Stoliar, STOLIAR.com/shop. Nice to see I can still spell my name correctly. That's very reassuring. Anyway, so if you want a signed copy, go to my website, or you can get it off Amazon. And people, two of my favorite responses to the book that I get fairly frequently. One is, I hate you. And it's like, I would hate me too if I were as big a Groucho fan as I was and am, and met this guy that got to work there and got paid money to immerse himself in that world. I would hate him too. The other is, you owe me 8 hours of sleep, because I was just going to read the first few chapters and it was like eating potato chips, one friend of mine said. And she said, I was just going to read to this point and then to this point, and then they end up reading the whole book and wish it had been longer, and then they're tired. So that is that. And as if that weren't enough, which it's debatable whether it was, I have a new book. What's that? He says. Yes.
Oh God. This name, but I just want to mention, this name could be very appealing and at the same time seem controversial, but but not necessarily, I'd say,
Oh, I run to and embrace controversy.
Oh, I love that. I admire that.
For political correctness or inappropriateness and all the things that people say. It's called Salamis and Swastikas, Letters Home from a GI Jew. And they are my father's wartime letters to my mother from North Africa and Europe during World War II. And the reason I put salamis in the title was because when I started going through them, I was astonished at how frequently my dad would say, if you could see your way to send me a kosher salami, it would be a little bit of home. If you could, and then mom would try to send it from St. Louis and it would arrive spoiled and rotten and inedible. And it's like he would see the package and say, I was so excited. I saw it. I knew what it was. And I opened it up and it smelled like a dead animal and I had to throw it away. And then she would send him another one and it wouldn't make it. And then finally they started arriving fresh and in an edible way. And he would just write all about how it takes him right back home. And all the other boys want him, even the non-Jewish soldiers want him, and he will cut off a piece for them, and now he's only got a third left, so if she could send him another one, and then he worries that she's using up too many of the rationed meat points that the civilians had, and it's like, well, no, I know you and the baby need to get nourishment, so maybe we should hold off. And then a couple weeks later, I sure have a hankering for a kosher salami. And in fact, Schwartz's Deli in New York, their motto is send a salami to your boy in the army. Because
I love that.
The Schwartz family had 3 sons who fought in World War II. They were all gone at the same time. And that was what they wanted too. So my dad wasn't alone. And the GI Jew part is because it's filtered through the prism of basically a secular Jew who was not really into going to temple and honoring all those traditions, but loved the whole cultural aspect.
Oh yeah, I know.
And
I know. I have a lot. I'm like that. I'm that way. I
yeah,
appreciate
you don't
the
go to
cultural
Friday
aspect.
night services, but you like matzo ball soup.
Yes, and actually, ironically, even though my father was a caterer for 40+ years, when you eat I like variety. So when you eat something for so long, you grow up and you want a little something different. So a lot of my favorite foods were never really his. I feel bad saying that, he knows it. But like the best matzo balls were the ones my mother made from the mixes. Because
Yeah.
also until he retired, which was a couple of years ago, we mostly got the leftovers from when he catered big parties. So now he makes everything he makes is fresh in the house.
But I bet his leftovers were probably exponentially better than other people's food that they slaved over the stove all day to prepare.
It depends. And then again, I'm biased. He knows. But also, like, but even when he worked before Pesach, he would cook in our kitchen. But that was the only time during the entire year. And he made chicken soup fresh in our kitchen. And there was nothing like the chicken soup he made in the kitchen pre-Passover that we had enough cartons to extend past Passover. And now he cooks in the house much more often. So, as does my mother. So then again, for some reason, our fridge still has so much space sometimes. And then when the fridge is crowded, I can't find anything I'm looking for. That's because we move things around to make room for other things, and the things I want are in the place where it's not where I put it, and then I forget we had it. So yeah, I have an excellent long-term memory. I can remember something from like 30 years ago, and I'm about to be 35. Yet I'll forget what I did yesterday or the day before.
Well, you'll
last
make
weekend.
a great old man, because that's what happens when you get old. You get the early memories remain vivid, and then you can't remember who you had lunch with yesterday. If it's any consolation, it only gets worse as you get older.
They say 60 is a new 40, but the cop that pulled me over doesn't seem to think so. And on top, and on top of that, I don't age. I look the same since I was like a little kid. Like when I was 18, I looked like I was 10. My little cousin saw a photo of me when I was 9 and said my name. I realized I don't look too much different from when I was 9. So I'm lucky if they'll stop calling me by age 70.
Well, it'll catch up to you. You'll wake up one day and you'll wonder what happened to the mirror.
Well, yeah, actually, speaking of that, I was at the Home Depot the other day, and I said, "Sir, excuse me, why are there all these? What's with all these portraits of naked men?" And the guy said, "Excuse me, sir, those are mirrors, and we're gonna have to ask you to leave."
Why don't I believe you?
Because it's like one of the Bill Murray jokes. Like I was sitting at my local pizza store, and Bill Murray took a fry and said, "Nobody believe you," and walked out. One of those things. It's obviously yeah, you could tell. That's your intuition. I don't do stand up. I do sit down, and there's a reason for that. I know that was pretty silly. No, but in all seriousness, I have played piano almost 27 years. So I if anything, I would do for performance, it would be piano. I love music, and that's why Harpo's his Harlem Globe style approach to the piano, meaning his like very
that was not Harpo. You have to guess which instrument Harpo.
Oh no, not Harpo. That was Chico, right?
Right.
I'm terrible with names. Better with faces.
It's actually Chico, because he chased chicks, yes, and caught them frequently.
What is that a double entendre, or are we talking about?
No, just the one.
I mean, talking about chickens. Is it fowl or on pheasant, or?
It was foul of him to chase chicks.
No, but I'm talking about, are the chicks the like chickens, or like the chick? I know. That was pretty bad. This is why I do sit down.
And that's why I say when you're smiling.
I feel like I must stash you a question. No, so yeah. I know it's pretty bad. No, but tell us about, like, I was wondering about the John Lennon book. That's the one book I didn't do research on that you were
It's not a book.
It's not a book? I guess I should have done my research.
Well, I'll wait while you do your research. Both people who are watching will find something else to do in the interim. No, I worked for a small production company in the early 2000s, which sounds really weird because in my mind that's still the people living like the Jetsons, the early 2000s, instead of being 20 years ago. Anyway, I would write and produce and sometimes narrate pop culture documentaries. And on a number, I mean, I did one on the Marx Brothers, and I did one on John Lennon. There's one on Martin Luther King. There was one on
right.
the Colonel with Elvis, and they were, you know, they were interesting to do. So that's what Inside John Lennon is. It's a documentary, and I'm not even sure it's available
On digital yet?
Huh?
On digital yet? You mean is it
I mean, it
like
came out
DVD?
it came out as a DVD, but I don't know if it's
Right.
out of print or not. But you know, they float around eBay and maybe Amazon.
Yeah, there's still a lot. Believe it or not, there's still a lot of movies that never got adapted to digital, let alone DVD. There are still
Right.
movies that have never been even adapted to a DVD, regardless of
We're
their
so
following.
we're spoiled by DVD and Blu-ray, and there'll be some movie and you'll find out, well, we have a used VHS of it, and you think, oh, I'd rather wait. And I remember, you know, when VHS came out, it was like, oh my God, you can have a whole movie on one of these boxes. Wow, and you can play it anytime. Because when I was a kid, I thought it would be great to have a film collection, but
A library, a video library.
Yeah, film library of 16 millimeter sound films. Well, that involves a projector and splicing stuff and hundreds of dollars for each title
And equipment, and the equipment you had to do to
but
make
man,
it happen.
Video
produce them,
cassettes, you could get a
distribute.
blank video cassette for $15. I remember thinking
A blank.
a
Yeah.
blank, and thinking, wow, I could fit 2 or 3 movies on this for $15 and just pause the recorder when the commercials come on.
I remember my mother would buy them in bulk, like five tapes.
Yeah.
And
And then of course when the price went down, it was like, this is just sinfully wonderful. I'm building up this film collection at a fraction of what 16 millimeter prints would cost. And then of course, you know, you couldn't give away VHS. Garage sales are bursting, even with the pre-recorded stuff. People just don't want it if it's not on a shiny silver disc. And now those are approaching obsolescence because of streaming. But I'm a tangible guy. I like books, as you can see. That isn't a fake backdrop. That's really my office.
Until Amazon, Amazon as a streaming service, I was never a fan of Netflix. I stuck to DVD and Blu-ray, even VHS. But it was with Amazon that got me started on that. But also, I've never liked ebooks. When it came to books, I always liked print. I still do. Ebooks has never been my thing. I always like to have the physical.
Right. But I don't begrudge people the convenience of them.
Of course.
I know a lot of copies of Raised Eyebrows have been the Kindle version over the paper version. And then I also recorded the audiobook doing all the voices. And people have said it's great on a long trip to pop that in and listen to your book, which is a different experience because it's sort of a performance rather than reading the page. So, you know, I'm not a snob about it. I think it should be out in whatever format people want. But personally, no, I don't read books that are.
It's your preference. It's your preference.
Yeah, and also I like books, you know, I like to get them signed by the author or have cartoonists
100%.
draw a little doodle or something. It's very hard to do that when it's just light on a screen.
Even that, like, you move to another book, like, wait, this is the wrong autograph. This is the wrong book for that autograph. Like, plus, I don't expect a permanent marker to even stay permanent on a computer or little Kindle screen.
Well, look, we're on the verge of nuclear annihilation anyway, so it won't. If it's any consolation, it won't matter very soon.
It's pronounced nuclear.
What's the middle of an atom called? The nucleus? No, the nucleus. So then what is the war? Nuclear.
I don't trust atoms. They make up everything.
Very good.
Yeah, I know. That's a lot of the jokes I make are older than my grandfather.
I just try to think of things on the spot. It's more rewarding and less likely.
No, agreed.
person has heard them.
Yeah, I've actually done that, but like it's usually then I don't remember them later on. But there was the first time I did it, I took an American sports history class, and they had a sports historian on the documentary. And what was his name? Shirley Povich. And so my teacher said, "Do you know who that is?" And somebody said, "That's Maury Povich's father." So I said, "Oh, so he is the father." And then everybody started laughing. But Maury had the show. Shirley Povich was his father's name. Shirley.
His father's name was Shirley?
Yes, and yes, I'm being serious. Surely I am serious. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Listen, there's some guys named Ash. It's short for Ashley. Like, it's...
Well, what's Shirley short for? His age?
I don't know, but that...
It's short for his height.
It's just for... It's long for sure. I don't know. That was a stretch. No, but I actually wanted to ask you. Groucho Marx was like, he is timeless. He is. There's never been anybody like him, and I wanted to know. I want to hear some experiences about what happened when you lived with him, and how it was like, not just living with, but for better or worse. But obviously, what you feel most comfortable telling.
Well, I didn't live there, but I started out working there 7 days a week, which is almost the same. And then I did stay there on weekends towards the end because I was put in charge of the household and sort of a referee between the two warring factions, which was a remarkable responsibility. But I was happy to do it because it was helping out my hero in his last days.
In Judaism, I think we call that, I call you a tzaddik, as they would call you a tzaddik for not just because he's your hero, but you dedicated so much time and you devoted so much of yourself to
It's a cliche, but it was a labor of love. Getting Animal Crackers released was a labor of love. Handling his fan mail and his memorabilia, I really should have been paying them. And then towards the end, when things got really contentious, arguably that was my most important role in the years I spent there, was helping the two different groups of people not run into each other or cause Groucho any more stress or discomfort than he might have been in. But just an amazing ride.
Can I ask a question? On a daily basis, how was he? I mean, like, was obviously he's very funny. He has a lot of he's like his responses
are a serious man underneath it. I mean, a brilliant sense of humor, but a serious man.
Of course.
He was not always on. He had an inferiority complex about not getting very far in school, but he made up for it by being a voracious reader, and was very proud of the books that he wrote, and his book of letters that the originals were sent to the Library of Congress. And he is, and in the 30s when he was at MGM, he preferred to sit at the writers' table rather than, there were all these big stars at the other tables, like Clark Gable and Robert Taylor and Greta Garbo and Joan Crawford. He didn't care about that because he thought that stars were sort of self-absorbed and not that interesting. He was much more drawn to
creative
the writers' table because they would be clever and talk about less superficial things. What's happening in the world? What's happening in Germany with Hitler? What's going to happen with this guy? What's going on among people that they knew and all that. And it was very stimulating. And he was that way, even in his later years. He wouldn't get all nervous or impressed because some big star was coming. But he had great respect for writers that he, either newspaper columnists that he followed, or people who had written novels or for the screen. So, the apparatus that made him Groucho stayed that way all to the end in terms of being able to make puns and twist things or be sarcastic. It was almost like a reflex, like, you know, you hit him with a rubber hammer and the joke comes out. Beneath that was an essentially a serious guy.
Yeah,
I see that I'm moving herkily-jerkily. I don't do that.
Yeah. No, we know.
It's not
I just
frozen, but it's not normal.
You know,
I don't know what it is.
A friend of mine.
I'm out of self. Well, you said you love the Twilight Zone, so here we are in one.
A friend of mine, her friend, was a neighbor of Robin Williams, and he also was a very serious person when he wasn't being fun. I know I know a lot of course, a lot of comedians come from a very dark place. Usually, like Steve Martin is one of those two.
I can't. Your audio is cutting in and out.
Yeah, and you're cutting in and out too.
How romantic.
Yeah, You're right. Usually I have this issue with Zoom. Hold on. Yeah, we're both cutting in and out. Hold on a second. Okay. One last time because we have about 10 minutes left. I'm sorry. I'm gonna remove you and then I'm gonna click on the link one more time. Okay. I'm sorry. I know. Don't cry. Don't cry.
Right.
One last time. Yeah. Sorry, everyone. Bad internet connection on somewhere along the line, and some technical difficulties. Just give us one momento. Alrighty then. Anyway, well, I'm the only one here. Maybe take a quick nap. I'm just kidding. Oh. What is going on? Oh, there he is. There he is. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, but it's not. I'm herky-jerky.
I think it's just a bad connection. This never happened before. I am so sorry. Not like this. Steve?
Well,
I am so sorry. Anyway, you know,
now you're frozen. Holding your teeth. That's a fine
I'm frozen?
pose for you.
Oh, God.
Like a toothache.
Hold on.
You were.
Am I better? Am I better? No?
Well, now it's just me.
No, I brought myself back in.
There you
I feel like this is a skit. This is just a skit. I'm just kidding. There you are. I'm so sorry. This is never. So okay. No, but I want to ask. So
this is not the best. This does not show StreamYard off to its best advantage.
Yeah, usually it's an internet connection thing because it's
Hello?
Yeah, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Hello, Steve?
Intermittently, I think we reached the
what?
I don't hear you.
You don't.
I don't hear you. I see you laughing. I hear.
I don't understand.
I think we've reached the end of the broadcast day.
Yeah, we're gonna have to. I am so sorry for the inconvenience. This is I feel like a guy on a date on a
cards, pal.
I know. I'm usually such a card, but this is ridiculous. This is just unfortunate. I'm so sorry. I dealt like 12, 13 shows. You can't hear me? Can you hear me?
I hear every 12th word. I heard that.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know what's going on. Damn, we're cutting out. I'm ending the. I'm so sorry.
Well, sir.